Well, my just by and by, my house hopping has ended, so I'm back home again, which is quite horrible, really, because now all the excitement is over, and I've realized I love the adrenaline. But anyway, that's by and by.
Now you realize it?
I'm a slow learner, okay?
Yeah. I think a lot more people will admit that they're adrenaline junkies in private, but we all are, you know. Anyway,
So
I'm
on
glad
that
you had a
note,
good, successful house sitting.
I did. I had a lot of fun. So it's something new to just, it's nice for now. Eventually, I might get bored with it, like everything. You do things, and eventually, it's like, I need to change it or swap it or up level it, because otherwise, it's the same old, same old. That's not fun.
Mhm.
So, what I was thinking today is talking about adrenaline. We know that we've been talking like for nearly a year, right, Dino? It's so cool. And we've had all these, every week we have these conversations. And we've spoken about this often, but I think we haven't actually spoken about it per se. So we know that in 1997 you were in People's Magazine, right? We know that because we've spoken a bit about it. But what we don't know is, what does it feel like to be in People's Magazine, and what does it feel like to be? I mean, we know you're already quite a celebrity on your own right now, right?
All right,
But
so
what does it feel?
let me correct you really quickly, because this is one of my pet peeves, only because the first ghostwriters that I hired to help me write my book, that's how they said it. It wasn't just one magazine, it was the People's Magazine. I'm like, what the hell is that? It's People Magazine. And in any country that it exists, it's called People Magazine. Just a clarification.
Right.
I'm bothering you. I'm bothering you.
Yes. It's People Magazine. But before I go down that road, I want to just to add my own little thing, is that People Magazine isn't okay. I'm going to be rude now, right? People Magazine isn't a magazine that I usually read anyway, right? But it's interesting that People Magazine, it shows you how synchronicities, and who would have known that we would have had this conversation all these years later. That People Magazine I read because of Versace, right? Because Versace, it was Versace was murdered, and his story was there. So as I was looking at this, I remember that picture of this dude with his bracelets. And it's so interesting that later now, who would have thought all these years later we're having this conversation? So what is it like to be a celebrity? That's what I'm saying. What is it really like?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's awesome. It's scary. It's awesome. It's fun. It's like jumping off a cliff without a parachute. It's all of the above. It's interesting. Yeah, today is the 25 years ago. I was in People Magazine.
Today it's cool.
And I hated that pose, but they wanted me to do a pompous pose, the muscle and the, looking, and they're like, do a little smirk. And I hated that smirk. I hated my hair. I hated what I was wearing. I mean, let's talk about vanity. I remember all these things going through my head, but I remember most was that, yes, Versace was just murdered, right? And I was actually supposed to be in the issue a week before the Versace issue. But when you know it, Jimmy Stewart passed. And so I was bummed. And they're like, okay, we're putting you in this magazine. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, wait a minute. I mean, you're talking about like, this is Versace forever. Right. When you have to explain, oh, you're in People Magazine, because I don't read People either, but I don't read Forbes magazine either, but it was an honor to be in Forbes. So, I mean, these are magazines you cannot deny are very popular. I mean, millions and millions.
Yeah, right.
So I remember thinking to myself, it's like, oh my God, forever I'm going to be like stigmatized where I have to explain, oh, it's the one with Versace on the cover, you know. But, thinking about it now, what's staying power? I mean, I'm certainly not discounting Versace being murdered or, how horrible that is. But if I was ever going to be in a magazine, it's probably a good thing that it was with somebody that, people will actually read. It had, except for Princess Diana, it had the most views that year or 10 years. I don't even know the statistics. Who cares? But the point is that's where hundreds of millions of people literally just came out of the woodwork and were exposed to this product, this little pet rock that I would call it, and it was because of that magazine that Oprah Winfrey's people reached out and said, hey, Oprah wants you to be on the show. And Sally Jesse Raphael and QVC and Entrepreneur Magazine and on. I mean, that was the day.
Wow.
And I remember, because success, the money doesn't, for everybody who thinks differently, it's not like you invent something and then that same day, there's a truckload of cash that comes to your front door. It catches up to you eventually. So ironically, when that photo was taken, I still didn't have a house of my own. I still lived in an apartment. And one of the things is that the people who wanted to do the photographers that were scheduling the shoot, were like, where do you want to have it? Let's go to your house. And I was embarrassed to say, well, I don't have a house. I live in an apartment. So I came up with something and I'm like, you know what? I got a perfect place, a cute neighborhood, homey looking thing. So it turned out to be that house that's in the photo is my parents' house. That's the front of their house. And of course, all the neighbors that knew me for years there growing up, because we lived there since I was 12 or 13, they're all like, what's going on? I mean, there were trucks, there were people, there was, little sandwiches. I mean, just like a regular movie shoot, like, come on, guys, this is just a photo. But believe it or not, that photo was part of 7 hours worth of photographs.
Whoa, it's insane, right?
Yeah, so weird. And then somebody, I mean, do you want me to talk about this?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So, this van opens up the doors and then they come out with like a couple garbage cans and they come out with all these products, like the sticky fly paper and the citronella candles and off spray and, all these other things, SC Johnson's skin cast that, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're like, we have an idea. You're going to trash your competition. And I'm like, but I don't want to do that. But what am I going to say? I mean, I didn't realize that, you do have some control over your image. But at the time, I'm just like, dude, this is People Magazine. You know what? Whatever they say, as high as they want me to jump, I'm jumping. So I did the smirky face and I did the stupid look and I did the, flexing and I had my foot on the garbage can and it was piled up with all kinds of products. And then I hear clicking in the background. It's my parents with their own little camera taking pictures from the back. I don't even know where those are. I mean, I don't save any. I'm surprised I even saved the photo that I posted today. Actually, I didn't save it. I don't even know where that plaque is. But my cousin had it. And for some reason we were talking and I'm like, hey, do you have, and sure enough, he had it. And I felt kind of embarrassed. I'm like, he has it. He has a clipping and I don't. I don't even have the original magazine. I'd have to go to Amazon to buy it for $20, $30, whatever. So it just shows you how much I cared about those things. The success, that 15 minutes of fame, let's call it that, okay?
Yeah.
Was very exciting. It's everything that people imagine it should be. Forget about the pitfalls and, oh, you don't know, it's not easy. And I'm talking about that 15 minutes, that moment, that snapshot in time. It was bliss. Okay. And it's funny, though. It's really funny because at that time, I remember saying interview after interview that, I want my product to be the #1 mosquito repelling product in the world. Look out, SC Johnson. And I want my product to be synonymous with Xerox copies and Kleenex tissue. At the time, that didn't really happen. I was the guy, I invented that thing, that bracelet. Well, I don't know. Well, it lasts for 40 hours and the fragrance of it. Well, I still don't know what it is. It's the one in the cover of Versace's on the cover. Oh, okay. I'll read it. That was then. 25 years later, here's something amazing. You run into people that are like, oh, yeah, I used this. Or, yeah, my son was allergic to toxic stuff and we used to buy your product. 25 years later. Here's the interesting thing. I can't say most, a lot of them probably were buying my knockoff rivals. But 25 years later, my wish actually came true. Synonymous with Kleenex tissue and Xerox copies. Bug band. Oh, yeah, it's the thing you put on your wrist. So how funny things happen.
So be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, well, I wish for a lot of things. But 25 years later, the vast majority of people that I help, whether it's in the sober community or the people that I help mentor or whatever you want to call it, coaching, they weren't even old enough to read that magazine, let alone buy it themselves.
Right.
And still, I posted that not because look at me, 25 years. It was a proud moment. You can't take that away, right?
No.
But more so than that, the post was really, it was done on purpose to show that you don't have to be stuck in the past with anything, right? That reinvention is beautiful and it's wonderful and change happens whether you like it or not.
Yes.
You might as well change with it. It's a lot better that way. And so everybody that's defined by, I invented Bug Band, 25 years ago, I was in People magazine. 25 years ago, I was on the Oprah show. That's great. And that's true. What are you now? Are you still stuck in the past? It almost reminds me of Napoleon Dynamite, the movie, where Uncle Rico's sitting there and lamenting about, back in 1982, I used to throw a pigskin a quarter mile. He's stuck in the 80s. He's stuck in that year. You know what I'm saying? And so more than any other reason, the post was, hey, if I could get your attention, because today is a marked day, right? It's the anniversary of People magazine putting me in the pages. If that gets your attention, that's great. But more than that, it's now that I have your attention, let me explain something. Yeah, it was great, but it was a moment. A moment doesn't define you. It's moments, compilation of moments that define you to make you who you are.
Right.
And as long as you're alive, your story isn't told totally. Because the brilliant part is you could change anytime you want. Or just stay stuck in neutral in some, cyber space that, you just kind of want to just stay in the moment. So that's really what I was doing.
And I love that because you always hear, a lot of times you meet people and they go, oh, this world is so terrible and the United States or America is dying and all this nonsense. And you go like, what? When we back in the day, you know, in whatever, it was much better. And people don't realize that, no, it wasn't really. It's just because they remember that. Just come and enjoy what
Or
we
the
have right
stage in
now,
or the
right?
stage in their life that they're in. I mean, you know, I mean, there could be a bad moment. I could get 2 or 3 separate emergencies in the next 2 minutes that by all rights should bring me down. I mean, and then you look at things and you're just like, oh man, why does this always happen to me? Yeah, you know, and then somebody will tap me on the shoulder and say, you know, we didn't have these problems back in the early 90s. You know, I mean, there's always some desperate search for commonality, I think,
Yes, yes.
to explain how you're feeling. This feeling that I have now is in an act. And I'm not going to lie and say that it's easy to be like this all the time. It takes work. It takes work. It takes a lot of soul searching and a lot of deep dives and a lot of corrections and a lot of grounding yourself.
Yes.
And staying humble, which is really, really hard for me to do. Naturally, I'm competitive, pompous, arrogant, all the things that you can imagine. I was and probably am a lot today. But at least today, I ground myself. I'm here for something different, right? It's not easy to do this. It's constant care, just like anything else.
Yeah.
Lotion on your skin after a shower or an exercise, or the rituals that we take as gospel that we all do every day. I mean,
Yes.
isn't it just as important to take a few minutes and also fine tune your mind every day?
Yes,
I mean, it just
yes.
makes sense. But people
Very
will concentrate on building their bodies more than their minds, right? Or people will say, well, you know, I build my mind because I read. Okay, reading's good, right? But you're talking to somebody who dislikes reading. You find other ways, right? You experience life. You ask questions. You stay curious. And you believe that, you know, if you could do, you know, I mean, look, after that 15 minutes of fame went by with Bug Band, right? I did hit, and it's very well documented in my book. I hit a brick wall, right? My first brick wall. No, not first, but major brick wall. And somebody really aggravated me by saying, you know, you were lucky that you did what you did and you have a little bit of money, and you know what, count your blessings. And I know that was meant to be comforting, but you don't tell somebody like me you were lucky to have done what you have done, because it wasn't luck. Okay. You know, I worked my ass off.
No, of course, I'm
to be in a position to pounce and seize the moment and seize the opportunity. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But when somebody says lucky, the first thing I'm thinking is, okay, I'm going to do it again. And I'm not just going to do it again, going back into the same industry that knows me. Because remember, at that time, I was still relatively famous or well-known. You know, I could have easily picked up and came out with something that would have gotten press immediately. I chose to go a completely different route and just start something completely different, just to prove a point to them. Yeah, I'm that kind of person, and also to me, that it can be done. So, I mean, you know, like we've talked about a lot of times, you know, the stuff that happens to us is really great fuel for inspiring others with a road-tested story that stands the test of time. I mean, everybody can understand being defeated or feeling defeated. Everybody can understand feeling blissful and successful. And everybody loves that comeback, that David and Goliath story.
Right,
And
right.
here I am, basically the walking billboard for comebacks. And for the longest time, I'm thinking to myself, well, I better just keep it to myself. You know? And I'm like, what am I doing? You reach a point in your life where I don't care. I mean, there's so many people today, by the way, that reached out after I posted that. And like, I didn't even know you were in. What am I supposed? I don't greet you and say, hey, I was in People Magazine. I mean, if you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. But it kind of shocked some people today. The point is that I don't have to say what I was in, but I can experience, like I'm road tested enough to be able to say what happened to me, hoping that it will sink in or inspire somebody else who may be going through their own rags to riches story, their comeback, their ups, their downs, their defeatist attitude, and how you can kind of trick your mind to change course. You never beat these feelings, by the way. There's a lot of books that are like how to beat this, how to cure this, or I beat addiction. You don't beat these things. You control them. You overcome them, right?
You change, you transmute them, you change them somehow.
Yeah,
right?
but you never beat them. Here I am 25 years later telling you that every day I fight to stay humble. You don't beat arrogance or, there's certain people who are a certain way. I'm extremely competitive. There's no way I'm going to ever be passive, but I'll try. But deep down inside, all these ingredients that, we consider bad, well, that was fuel for me for years, still is, to aspire to be bigger than big. And that could be in your own way, obviously.
Yeah,
So
I don't think that's negative. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm saying I don't think it's negative because I think a lot of people don't have that vision, so they don't allow themselves to go that big where they could. So you've seen that vision, and so people can look up to you and say, well, hey, you know what, he's got that vision, maybe I can reach to that level as well, or whatever. So it's a good.
But there's two things that you just said, and that's the thing. Maybe I'm shy. I don't believe it or not. But I'm shy about like always talking about myself, bragging like that. Like I don't want, you mentioned they look up to you. I don't want somebody to look up to me. I want somebody to be inspired. Like if this guy could do it, who's a college dropout for one, who didn't believe in a lot of the things that are actually good to believe in, can do it. I certainly can do it. That's what I would prefer to have happen.
Well, maybe that's what I was saying, like you an example where people can see you for, excuse me, can see you and say, well, hey, you know what, he's done it. Maybe I can aspire to do the same thing. Or
and the
reach
other
out
thing
and say,
is that I believe people do dream big. And I believe there's a lot of people that dream a lot bigger than I ever have. But I also believe that they don't believe that.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing.
Right. It's not that somebody can't dream as big or bigger than me. They do. It's just that I always believed I can do it.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that can't believe that they refuse to believe that they can do it. And I don't know where that came from for me. I just maybe too many movies. Who the hell knows? I mean, maybe it was my dad just putting in my head that I'm going to be. I mean, it's a horrible thing to put in a kid's head if you think about it. You're going to be a rich man because you have a part in your teeth. Okay, I don't know.
I love that story.
But But I believed him. I believed him. I didn't even know what rich means, but I believed him. You know, now trying to live up to that, well, I mean, that's got its own whole set of stuff. But the main thing I think that was ingrained in me is that I could, where other
Yes.
people may be told you can't, you won't, you shouldn't. And then you start believing that too.
Mm.
You know, when you hear something enough times, you believe it. And that's why a lot of people, I don't want to go down this road because, you know, I don't want to like destroy the momentum here, but a lot of people in failed relationships or miserable relationships, abused spouses. I'm not just going to say women, men go through the
Men
same
too,
thing.
yes.
Where mental abuse, where you're browbeaten. That's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
You're not good enough. You're ugly. You're disgusting. You're lucky to have me. Or all these crazy things that you hear from time to time. And you don't really think about it. But if you hear it enough times, you start believing it.
Yes.
Okay. So there's no difference to what we're talking about.
No. And that just keeps you stuck. So that's when you get I mean, I can talk from experience where I was eating chocolate. You just eat chocolate because you start eating you start having to comfort yourself, right? So you eat chocolate or food or whatever and put on weight, and then you look at yourself and you're like, oh, I'm really gross. Look at me. Look what I look like. I put on weight. I look so terrible. And then you just continue in that cycle. And it's so difficult to get out. That's why a lot of people don't get out of bad relationships, because they're so
They don't believe they can.
They don't believe they can. They don't believe they can get out of that. They don't believe they can do anything after that. And
you know the statement that I always hated, and maybe hate's a strong word, but I'll just use it, is these people, I'm a guy, so I'm going to use a woman, this gorgeous woman, right? And a guy, I'm not going to say ugly, great, it doesn't matter, but just a regular guy, a regular dude. And you hear things like, I'm so lucky to have you. You could have anybody else in the world. Why me? Thinking from a guy's perspective, this is supposed to be a compliment to the female who's with him.
yes.
And I keep thinking to myself, if I was a female, that would be like the biggest turnoff in the world for me. Right? I should be lucky to have you. What do you think she's doing? Just hanging around, just like, spending time because she has nothing better to do? Obviously, there's something there. So don't like knock yourself out of the game.
Right.
Stop worrying about why and just be happy that you're in a relationship.
Right.
That always got me, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it is a turn-off, right? It's like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And then another thing I also, going back to the abuse, is I always smile. This is like smile in a weird way, okay? I shouldn't be smiling. But a lot of people say we're staying together for the children. And I always say, oh, wow, to myself. I don't usually say it to people, but I'm going to say it now. It's like such a cop-out, because what you're doing is you're destroying yourselves, you're destroying each other, and you're destroying the children.
Kids are a lot smarter than you think, first of all.
Yeah,
they pick up.
Yes, but you're putting them in this abusive situation. You're teaching them this, and they have to be brought up in all this tension and all. It's horrible. It's better to break up.
Yeah.
But it's difficult for a lot of
kids
people.
are always the first to know, and regardless of what the parents think, the kids are really smart.
Of course they
and
are.
Actually, the familiar part of a breakup is emotional. It does scar. I mean, and children scar, I think differently than adults. But that said, scars aside, or scars healed or mended or whatever, they'll all tell you that, oh my God, that was the best thing that ever happened, because they get sick listening to people fight. And some aren't even abusive fights, but just the yelling and screaming and the tensions and the horrible things that you say that you can't take back. They remember that stuff.
Yes.
And so, it's better just to move on. Anyway, back to the main thing. I think the important thing today that I could say about the post and about the situation, about your question, didn't know this was coming, but okay, is reinvention. Is being able to understand that you can always reinvent yourself. It's never too late, right? I'm getting ready to be 57 in another month. Not old, but not young. It depends how you feel. It's just a number. But at the same time, I could be that person who says, I'm too old to change, or I could be like, well, define old, or, I mean, come on, right?
Right.
Yet I'm the same person who hated the way technology changed, but am starting to, I guess, practicing what I preach with difficulty on this particular platform, because I didn't like that change. You're talking about a guy who's used to selling and conversing and having business meetings that are face-to-face with handshakes and greetings and hugs. I'm a big hugger.
Yeah.
And eye contact and inflections. And all that has kind of given way, accelerated with COVID, but not because of COVID, to a much more emotionless world, where you don't necessarily always see eye inflection, and you don't have the human touch, you don't have the handshakes, you don't have the gestures, and you certainly don't have the hugs. Now you get virtual hugs.
I know.
Okay, and that's a tough pill to swallow. That's a tough one. There are certain basic things in life that will never change, even though I'm promoting change. And one of them is the human contact and the human interaction, which is critical.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So again, I'm relearning a new world, just like everybody else has to relearn their own new world. Right. This social stuff might be very, very easy for some people, but as the same person who finds that easy to go out in public and just shake a stranger's hand and start up a conversation, they're like, no, I can't do that. Or ask that same person who's got this down pat to go in front of 600 people and grab a mic and start talking with no speech. They can't do that, right? So it's just your ability and willingness to adapt and move on and change.
But it's also easy, again, with the adaptation and with this new world, it's easy to hide now. It's easy to hide behind Zoom and behind your computer and not go out, like you say, which is also not right. So you start isolating more.
Well, you're right. And a lot of the things that I find that people think it's easier to interact on this or on that, or, it's also, as far as I'm concerned, not as effective. For me, because I have to do a lot of stuff now with all the stuff going on, and a lot of it, unfortunately, is virtual. Yet every chance I get to schedule a face-to-face meeting, I still will do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, my face-to-face meetings will last 5 to 10 minutes and be far more effective than an hour on Zoom or a 2-hour Zoom. It's a very strange thing. I mean, people will say, well, why is that? Because it's something about the face-to-face thing. Because when you read somebody's gestures so perfectly, because they're so close to you, and you see their body language, you almost anticipate what they're thinking. You almost anticipate their next question. I'm not that polished to be able to pick all that stuff up on Zoom yet. or reading a post, or reading an email, or reading a text that has no face, no emotion, no inflections, nothing. You know, a comma doesn't tell me anything, even though it's grammatically correct. It's just a comma. So, you know, anyway, that's my take on it.
I like that. I just want to go back, and just because I have to bring in fear, right? What was it like when you hit the wall? I mean, you know, you've hit the wall many times, right, in your life. But how did you feel when you hit that wall and it was like, I mean, we know it's in your book, okay, but I want you to tell me how you felt.
At that time? Well, unlike other failures that I, at the time, considered epic, this was more of a public shaming.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about, I mean, and it's happened, I've noticed now, because of it, it happened to me. I notice now, like, you ever see somebody who's really, really popular, they're always on TV, they come out with a string of movies, and then, boom, they drop off the face of the earth and you wonder where they are.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't say why they're no longer around, right? But I can say for me, that's how it felt like. I was everywhere and then gone, right? Now the public has a very short memory.
Oh, very, yeah.
They honestly don't care where you are. Most of them don't. But as far as I'm concerned, because at the time I was eating my part. You know who I am? I'm Dino. I was in People magazine. I was just on Oprah. You know, it got to me. My head was huge, right? So for this failure to happen, this epic fail, was not only the failure itself was detrimental, but you gotta, you know, I failed also because of my addiction. And to me, it was almost like a humiliation. It was a public shaming. It was, you're not supposed to be in this bar drinking and looking like you do. You're not supposed to be in a bar talking to people who are here 10 hours a day drinking and they're not working. Aren't you supposed to be doing something else? You know?
Yeah.
And that was really embarrassing for me. So it felt twice as bad, as far as I'm concerned, than any other time that I've ever failed. But you know, it literally took me a year of just hanging out and hiding. That's the best word I could. Hiding in a bar that opened up, I think, at 10 and closed at 2 a.m. And I was there the whole time. And keep in mind, I had kids and a wife. And I didn't care. I cared more about hiding and kind of drowning out my sorrows. Look, people need to heal in their own way. I'm not saying the way I did it was right, but I find that in all my epic failures, there's a certain period of time where I have to kind of lick my wounds, and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
But it's what I've done. It doesn't make it right. It's just me, you know. You asked about me. So how did it feel? It felt horrible. It felt great. And then all of a sudden, it felt equally horrible. But you snap out of it. You know, 25 years later, I'm laughing about it, right? So everything passes and you heal, you know, and you move on. Life goes on.
Yes, that's important, the healing. So that's why now, looking back now at that time, what do you see?
What do I see? It was a great plaque that I no longer can find. Actually, there's a lot of plaques. I have a lot of them, and I just now put them up, not because I'm proud of them the way I was, but because they were taking up space in boxes. I actually put them on the wall in my garage. Okay. But People magazine, I can't find. Forbes, I can't find. I can't find the tape that had all of my news interviews from all over the world, which would have been really cool to still have. It just shows you how much merit I put into mementos.
Yeah.
It's one of those things nobody can ever take away from me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good accomplishment, and I'll give myself credit for that one. But it's one of those moments that is one of many moments that a lot of people may not know about, but I've done a lot of that stuff throughout my life,
Mm-hmm.
which is more important than that moment, People magazine, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
It means to me that if I can keep getting punched in the face and kicked in the head over and over, and you'd think I'd learn by now, anybody can do this. You just have to have just enormous will and belief, and you just got to keep moving forward. As hard as that is to just comprehend, you just got to keep, even if there's a fire right in front of you, you got to be like, you get yourself in a state of mind where you're like, you know what, it's only going to burn for about a minute. So let me just get it over with and go through it. Can't go around it. You got to go through it. So that's if there's anything that sums up this podcast, it's that. You can't go around fire. You got to go through it.
Right.
There you go. You could trademark that one, put it in quotes, and I'll accept a plaque for that
one. That is funny. I like that, but again, it always goes down to the belief, because you believed in your heart, you still do in your soul, that you can do anything, and you'll have someone else that has also potential, whatever, and they believe that they're anxious and they don't believe anything and they don't accomplish anything. So how do you harness that belief?
Harness?
Well, how do you grade it? How do you get it? How do you get it and use it? How do you find it?
All right. You know what? Out of all the questions, this is a really good one. Okay, so here it goes. And this doesn't cure cancer. This isn't the answer, but here's my version of it, okay? Savor whatever you get that constitutes, in the smallest minuscule way, positive reinforcement for belief.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's almost like that movie Dumb and Dumber, where it's like, what are the chances of me and you going out? I'd say about 1,000,000 to 1. And he says, so there's a chance. And that's funny. But that's what I mean, right? So let's put it in the cyber world, the social platforms. You post something that you think is great.
Right.
You get 2 likes. And you get deflated. Oh my God, why are people like, somebody else just posts a picture of food and they get 300 and I only got 2. Oh my God, I'm terrible. This is bad. Should I take it off? Should I delete my post? Should I like it myself? Should I, all these, I'm talking about, this is the new world, okay? So I'm kind of making fun of it. But, or you can look at it and say, you know what? 2 people saw this. And as dumb as that sounds, savor those 2 people, which tomorrow may turn into 3 people. So
Right.
savor the increase. Savor the increase, as small as it can be.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta take your wins gracefully, of course, but you gotta take your wins wherever they are, however small they are, and those little grains compound over time, and they start building a much bigger picture and a much stronger person. So
Yes.
for me, I had immediate fuel at age 7, probably earlier than that, but that's my first comprehensive memory of it. Okay, so we'll go with 7. But I was fed doses, spoonfuls of positive reinforcement that I'm destined for something great. Not every kid gets that. Okay. And I was very fortunate. I love my parents for doing that. But you don't have to just be force-fed that stuff. I mean, if you're not going to, because there's a lot of times in my life where nobody was feeding me anything except mud. Okay. So I would take the spoonfuls of mud, you know, find one little granule of sugar, keep that, spit the mud out and keep going. Right.
Yes.
You're not
Yes.
going to get the praise that you're looking for.
Yes.
And you're going to have to, every once in a while, be able to give it to yourself.
Right.
And where do you get that from? You know, I got to say that there's a spiritual connection that everybody has. It's either, you know, low lumens of light or very high lumens of light throughout your life. It's never the same. But there's something greater than ourselves in all of us. And it's how you tap into that. And it gets just brighter and brighter and stronger and stronger. So I'm in my zone right now. And I have been, thankfully, for several months, probably a year, in this particular stage, right? Are there times where my light's going to be much dimmer? Are there times where I'm going to feel deflated and I'm going to feel defeated and I'm going to feel angry? Yeah. But I have enough experience that helps me get past those feelings a lot faster because I have the experience. I couldn't say the same if I didn't. It would probably be a lot harder because I'd start asking the question, well, why? You know what I mean? It's very strange. I mean, there's no quick answer for this. There's no bottle that we could sell, no snake oil, nothing like that. It's just a thing. It's just, you know, look, life goes on. And what we have to do is we have to lift each other up once in a while. We have to inspire each other by example.
Yes.
You got to also be able to laugh at yourself too. I mean, you can't be that sensitive where you're going to take everything so much to heart that it just destroys your day. I mean, lighten up a little, you know? I mean, I got so many comments today about the post that I did about that picture. And I knew it was coming too. Ooh, you look like a baby. Oh, you look much better now than you did then. You know, I mean, you know, or, oh, I liked you better then. What a great picture. What happened? Or you got gray hair. What happened? Hey, you know, whatever. It's just a post. It's just a post. They're just comments. It's not a big deal.
Yes, but now now I'm going to ask you another question, because a lot of people take things personally. I mean, you take things personally. I'm trying, you eventually don't, but how do you stop yourself from taking things personally? Like, oh, look what you look like. Oh, you've got gray hair, or you look nicer now. Or how do you cope with those kind of comments?
Go ask more people what you look like so you could get one good answer and then savor on that one. I don't know. I mean, you know, everybody goes through that. I mean, the vanity thing, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you just can't take what everybody says. I mean, for me, growing up, you know, there were the heavier stages, especially when you're 13. I remember this time I was overweight and I was that awkward age where you're not a teenager, but you're not a boy, but you don't know what you are, right?
Yes, yes.
And, you know, you always have that Greek aunt that hasn't seen you in a year and they're like, oh, how are you, Dino? Oh, you got fatter.
Of course.
They don't mean anything by it. That's just how they talk. Oh, how are you? Oh, so nice to see you. It's been a long. Oh, you got fatter. I'm thinking to myself, and the first thing I'd be like, oh, I didn't, you know, you have to show, you have to tuck in your gut and you have to show people. Well, I didn't, I mean, you know, I mean, you go through that. I don't know, man. I don't know. That's a tough one to answer. How do you overcome that? I mean, again, you just find that one person that may have mentioned that, I looked good, and just concentrate on that and say, oh, all the other people don't know what they're talking about. I mean, you got to find your own way to motivate yourself and snap out of it is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
get out of that moment, man. If you don't like a movie, you get up and leave, right? If you don't like the smell of a certain area that you're in, you move away. You don't just sit there and keep smelling the stink. So if you start getting too many of those things, you look ugly, you look fat, you got gray hair, you just change the channel, man. I mean, it's free will. You don't have to sit there and just take it. If you don't like the comments coming back on your Facebook post, don't read it for a day. Boom. End of story. Okay, so I don't know. Better than that, I don't think I can.
Yeah, I like that. Just ignore it.
Yeah.
That probably works the best, like when you get someone who's starting to niggle with you or starting to argue with you, just ignore it and switch off. Yeah, we have first. It's not controlling you. You're the one that's with the.
There's too many other things we got to concentrate on. I mean, there's so many things going on in the world, let alone in our own heads, that I got time to listen to one knucklehead just try to explain to me the meaning of life and how they're better than me and who they know more important than me, and who cares? But if that's what you believe it. If you want to shout that from every rafter in town, do it on your post. If you want to do it on mine, I'll delete you, I'll block you. But that's my right.
Yes.
And it's also my right to just move on. Who cares?
Yes.
Life's so serious.
That's a problem as well.
Yeah.
Life isn't that serious.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Dino. This has been it's been a good one. It's been a good one. I think.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it. I mean, it was good. It was 25 years. I did post it today, and more than the blah blah blah. Look at me. I'm glad we got to talk about something that really is more important, I think, which is the power of reinvention. That you don't always have to be stuck in one place and savor that one thing. There's a lot more things you could savor. You got to just give yourself accolades, buy yourself a plaque, get a plaque, have a trophy, whatever it is, and it's just a place on a shelf. Now you got to move on. Right. Now you got to move on because you're more than one thing. And that was the important thing of today. But Thank you for letting me speak. I enjoyed it. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. This was a good show. Thank you, Dino, again. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye.
Bye.